Got him. Big one. Oh crap. Gotta catch up to him. Gotta catch up to him. Yeah. That'll turn your day around. That'll turn your day around. Holy crap. Big fish.
Hey there folks, welcome back to Kambotrout Fishing. So for today's video, what I'm going to do is give you, I'm going to call it 8 tips, but it actually has a bunch of sub-tips under each one of these. It's actually closer to 20, but we'll call it for right now 8 tips for frog fishing for snakehead. Now, will some of these tips help you with frog or mouse or topwater hollow body fishing for other species? Yeah, of course. But is the snakehead game slightly different? Yes. Yes, it is. And through the course of this video, I'll explain exactly why. And then, after we get through all the tips, you'll see a day where it's all the way back in the summer of 2022. That's how long ago this was, where you can actually see me put these tips into practice. Or you can go back and watch my older videos as well. It's all on there. But for right now, let's get to these 8 tips, and then we'll get to the fishing action for this week. Tip number 1, the hook gap. What do I mean by the hook gap? Well, when you're dealing with your frogs here, what you want to have is a nice big gap between the hook point and the body of the lure when this body of the lure compresses. And on that note, you want to have a body that is both soft and durable so the fish can easily compress it, because the wider that hook gap, the better a chance you have at hooking and landing that fish. Tip number 2, the hook angle. If you've been on my channel for any amount of time, you know I love my A-core frogs. One thing that I love in particular about the A-core frogs is the angle of the hook straight out of the pack. And you can see that the angle of the hook is facing slightly upward. If I turn it this way, you'll see it's almost kind of facing either in line or slightly outward with the hook. But for right now, let's focus on the slightly upward angle of the hook. Why do you want that? Well, it's true that you can, generally speaking, tune any hook out of the pack for any lure. So if you do get a frog where the hook, instead of being slightly up, is either parallel or slightly down, you can usually take some pliers or maybe a small metal straw, something like that, and bend those hooks slightly up and then slightly out from the body of the lure to get a better hookup ratio. However, when you do that frog tuning, almost no matter what you do, you're going to weaken that hook to some degree because that metal is already set in place. So when you go to bend it, you're going to cause a little bit of damage to that hook itself, which if you hook a really big snakehead, they have those extremely powerful head shakes. They can actually snap that hook. And I know guys it's happened to. It's not a pleasant experience. So better to find those lures out there made by folks like A-Core, like Infamous Fishing, who understand the importance of having that hook angle right out of the pack so that you don't have to do that tuning. Now, have I done the tuning in the past? Absolutely. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it's better if you can find those lures that are angled correctly straight out of the pack. You'll get a much better hookup ratio. Now let's talk about tip number 3, which is the trailer type legs versus ones that have a bit of flash on them. There are some days I've been out on the water where one of these will far outperform the other. And there's been days where no matter what I did, they would not hit this, but the minute I gave them a frog, with a little bit of flash on it, like this Northern Snakehead right here, that was the ticket. Now, why do I think that is? I think maybe on certain days when they're really keen on bait fish, having a little bit of flash on there really triggers that strike. Sometimes it's crucial. So moral of the story, keep both types of frogs in your inventory on the water. Have ones that have trailer type tails and have ones that have that metal flash on there. Tip number 4, trimming the trailer on your frogs. There are some lures that come out of the pack where sometimes you'll want to trim the tails slightly. Why do you want to do that? Because sometimes snakehead are short striking, and there'll be times where almost no matter what you do, you'll see them come up, grab the tails of this trailer, pull your frog under. There's nothing you can do. You can't hook them. They don't have it far enough for you to hook them. You're just gonna have to watch and silently or out loud curse to yourself about your misfortune for them short striking. But on the lures out there who do come with very long skirts, I generally will trim them up to about 2.5 to 3 inches total length on those skirts, because I want to try to avoid those short strikes or make a smaller profile for that lure. But be careful. Some folks don't know this, but one function that these tails actually serve, it does give the lure a little bit extra buoyancy, helps it float. So it is possible to trim them too close and then have a sinking frog, which I generally don't prefer. There are some applications where like a slightly subsurface presentation can be the ticket, but generally speaking, I like my topwater hollow bodies to float and float well. Next, let's talk about your prop type frogs versus your popping frogs versus your traditional frogs and mice with a regular snout. I keep all of those in my inventory because there are certain areas, certain structure, certain applications, and then just certain moods of the fish, it seems, where they prefer one over the other. So, I generally speaking use my traditional tip frogs and mice when I'm fishing super deep cover. I can cast these things back through sticks, through bushes, through trees to get back to that little pocket where I think that fish is sitting, waiting to ambush some unsuspecting topwater type bait or prey. So that's when I like to use those traditional tips, is in the really deep cover. Now, when it comes to the popping type, generally speaking, I prefer to use these in more open water, because what it does with that popping sound, it draws those fish in. Now, can you use popping frogs in deeper cover? Sure. However, this mouth right here will result in more hang-ups. It'll get stuck on the edges of pads, stuck on the edges of branches, twigs. So I generally use this in more open water. It's just a better application for it, a little bit more hassle-free. And then finally, you have your prop type lures, like this little duck guy right here. But what also comes to mind would be the Teckle series of lures, like the Maracker and the Honker. I like to use these in open water where the structure is usually more sparse, a little bit more forgiving. Because these tails, these extra moving parts back here, can get wound up with that real stringy types of grass or vegetation that's out there. So I generally use them in more open water, but I've also used them in heavy cover and done well. Moral of the story, I keep all three types on me because I never know what structure I might encounter, and more importantly, I don't really know what the fish are going to want until I'm on the water, so I have all three. Now let's talk about casting these lures. The reel that I tend to use is my Shimano Corrado 201. If you need a video on how to tune your bait caster for better casting, I'll also leave a link to that up here, because Rashawn and I back in the day did make a video on exactly how to do that. But when it comes to casting it, these are topwater hollow body lures, and they are weedless. But the thing you need to work on is going to be your accuracy. There are going to be some days where the snakehead are going to be deep in shoreline cover. There might only be a window about this big where you have to get that lure through to be able to get it back to those fish. I've seen it in Florida with the bullseye snakehead and the mangroves and bushes down there. I've seen it up here in Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia with some deep cover flooded shorelines. You need that casting accuracy to be able to get it right where you want it, to where that fish is hanging out, because sometimes their strike zones are small. They're not going to chase it several feet. You got to get it to them. So work on your casting accuracy. And when you're on the water, keep an eye out for those likely looking ambush spots and pockets that are deep in that cover. If you can drop it in there, a lot of times you can be wrestling a snakehead out. One last note on casting, something we discovered down there in Florida, and was actually told to us by our buddy Angel down there as well, is that sometimes it's best to actually cast the lure slightly up onto land and then pull it into the water. Why is that better? One, it's a more natural presentation, and they will sit on the shoreline waiting for a small terrestrial creature to come into the water. The other one is that by casting it up on the shoreline, you don't get that loud splash. And there are some days where snakehead are extremely spooky. They are not the voracious killers of everything that media and some other people out there would have you believe. Sometimes they are very, very spooky fish. So in those cases, if you have the option, it can be beneficial to cast up slightly onto land to get you that softer, more natural presentation. Now let's talk about the retrieve. The number one mistake that I see new snakehead fishermen make, especially with topwater, is working it too quickly. There'll be days out there where if you're not working it slowly, you won't catch anything, while the other guy on the river has caught 20. And how slow do I mean? When I cast a frog, I'll often let it sit once it lands for at least 10 to 15 seconds. And now I'll give a slight twitch and let it rest for another 10 to 15 seconds. And then rinse and repeat. Sometimes it takes that long to draw those strikes, so you have to have that patience out there. And speaking of patience and retrieves, snakehead a lot of times will miss on their initial strike. And when that happens, you have to do a couple things. One, exercise the self-control to make sure they have it. Slowly reel up that slack, make sure the frog is gone and not just still sitting there. Because if he missed it, and you have the self-control to keep that lure in the strike zone, oftentimes they will come back for it 2, 3, 4, or more times. So make sure they have it before you set that hook. And one more note on the retrieves, work it all the way in. I have had some strikes that are extremely close to the kayak, where you really want to make sure you work it all the way in, because snakehead are excellent at stalking a bait. A lot of times, unless it's super clear water, you won't even know they're there, and they'll be right next to your kayak looking at your frog. And you won't know until you go to cast, and then you see a boil, an explosion of water as they shoot off in the direction because they're spooked. So work that lure all the way in. But once you're sure they do have it, let's talk about the hook set. Let's say you've done everything right. You worked it slow, the snakehead now has it, you verified they have it. What you're gonna do now is reel up your slack, take that slack out of the lines and get a quality hook set, and then with everything you have, rear back and set that hook as hard as you can. Try to cross their eyes, because snakehead have very hard mouths. If you don't get that super powerful hook set in there, because keep in mind, a lot of times you're trying to set the hook on 2 hooks with these topwater hollow bodies, not 1. Make sure that you're putting everything you have into that hook set. Make sure the drag on your reel is locked down, so that when you go to set the hook super hard, you don't just hear your drag slipping instead. And in terms of the gear you want to use out there, my favorite frogging rod is without a doubt my Katie Lynn Black Ops. Now, I like to roll with nothing less than a 7-foot when I'm frog fishing. I tend to prefer 7.5, heavy or extra heavy power and extra fast action tip. That'll set you up for success for frog fishing out there. The line that I have spooled up right here is Berkley X9 40-pound test. I like this because of the balance for both castability and strength, but I do know folks out there who use 50, 60, 70, or 80-pound braid. Sometimes it calls for it. It's up to you what you use out there, but I recommend nothing less than 30-pound test with how much force you're going to be putting into this hook set. Now you might be able to see it here on the camera. The knot that I'm using on here is called the Bangkok Hooker Twist Knot. And what it excels at is preventing any type of abrasion or teeth from wearing through that line. Now, is it absolutely necessary? No. I have used Palomar knots for my topwater fishing for many years and done very well. However, if you find yourself getting cut or rubbed off and rubbed through this line, try that Bangkok hooker knot. It's nowhere near as hard to tie as you may think. And when it comes to switching out lures, you don't even have to retie. You just pull this loop out, take it out of this lure, put it into the next one. But I'll leave a link up here to the video where I go through that whole process. And last thing, let's say you've done everything else right and you've landed the fish, or you're about to land the fish. What do you need? You need a solid pair of lip grippers to be able to safely handle snakehead. You don't want to have your fingers anywhere in their mouth. Now, I've handled over 1,000 snakehead at this point at least. I've never had any snakehead try to do anything but escape. I've never had one try to attack me or bite me or anything like that. However, if you put your fingers in the business end of a snakehead, you got what's coming to you. Because I'm telling you, their teeth are very good at gripping and tearing. Their jaws are extremely powerful, and they death roll like crocodiles. So, use your lip grippers. If you have a good pair of jaw spreaders, use those as well, so you can safely extract that frog from the very toothy mouth of that snakehead. So either have some needle nose pliers, long nose pliers, or something similar to get that hook out of the fish. So folks, that covers all the frogging tips for this video today. Is there anything you want me to expand on? Let me know in the comment section. But for right now, it's time to hit the water, so you can see all these tips practically applied to some snakehead fishing out here. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let's get to it.
Well, I missed all the action, folks. It's been really slow out here, and I do mean really slow. But my Northern Snakehead has managed to help me hook up. All right. And today, unlike usually, I am actually going to be harvesting fish. And this one's going to be borderline. This one's definitely going to be borderline in terms of size. But I mean, the only reason I caught her is that I was watching right behind my lure and I saw the smallest wake. I wasn't even sure if it was a snakehead, but I slowed it down just in case. Brought it to a stop, and pop goes the snakehead. Might be just big enough to be worth keeping. Yeah, probably just big enough. And it looks like their eyes messed up too from this hookup. So I think I probably will keep her. Probably about a 20-incher, 19, 20. All right, let's get you off of there. Like, I've been using the buzzbait, but all I've been doing with the buzzbait is spooking fish. And I mean, granted, I'm pretty sure that most of the fish I was spooking were just carp. But still, with the water being as low as it is, yeah, I just pulled his eyeball out through his mouth. That's disgusting. You see his eyeball on there? Sorry, bud. Yeah, that's one more reason I'm going to go ahead and harvest you. I was planning on it anyway, but when you leave a fish like that with one eye completely ripped out. But don't get me wrong, this snakehead in all likelihood would survive completely fine. They are a tough fish. But there she is on the Northern Snakehead. I'm going to harvest this fish and get back to it. Yeah, I feel like I've been lucky this year in terms of a lot of the bites that I've encountered. What I mean by that is that in past years I've really had to slow down and finesse these fish. And this year I've really been able to power fish them on many occasions. You know, the buzz baits, I mean, even fishing the real American curly. It's a technique that you can cover a lot of water with pretty quickly. But today might be the first time that I encounter one of those bites where I really have to slow it down, really pick apart the water, work my lure a lot more slowly, give it those nice long pauses. It might be that kind of day, which would definitely surprise me because the conditions today are great. Like if I turned around, you'd be able to get a better understanding of it, but I got pretty good cloud cover. I mean, that factor in and of itself usually ends up resulting in a great day when I'm out at a place like this. But today I haven't seen too much yet. I mean, that's the first hit that I've gotten. So I'm gonna slow down, start picking it apart, see what happens. This snakehead bite is straight up trash today. I mean, it is awful. I'm telling you folks, there's some days when you're snakehead fishing that if you didn't know they were in the water, like if you didn't know it for a fact, you start thinking there wasn't any in here. Because I mean, not only am I not getting hits, I'm not seeing any movement. I'm not seeing any rise. And that's a really big problem because what I've noticed is that the more you see snakehead rise, generally speaking, the more active they are, the more they're moving around. And so the fact that I haven't seen like any snakehead rise out here is very indicative of their activity level right now. We 100% have a fry ball, and I'm pretty sure I see the parent.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Wait.
Good cast. Got him. Big one. Oh crap. Gotta catch up to him. Yeah. That'll turn your day around. Holy crap. Big fish. Oh yeah. Oh, that's what we needed. Let me get this dragon in here. All right. And anchor's in place. Okay. She popped the heck out of it. And man, did she choke it. Look at that. That'll turn your day around. Oh man. Don't worry, big guy or girl. I'm gonna get you back on your fry real soon. as soon as I can see that hook. Well, I got the body out. That should help me see the hook better. No wonder. I really got you, didn't I? There we go. There she is. What a beast. I mean, she might be a hair under 30. Let's find out. Let's find out. Let's see. She's like 29 and 7/8. Beautiful, beautiful fish. Look at that. Look at that. Gorgeous fish. Oh, you beauty, you. All right, let's get you back to your fry. I'm not gonna lie, little buddy, or little buddy, big buddy. You saved my day. And there's all your fry, all your pretty little babies. See if I can get you a little bit closer to them. There you go. Whew, God, that'll turn your day around real quick. Heck yeah. Now, despite some very tough conditions, I did catch a few more snakehead out here this day. But when I tell you I had to work for them, I do mean I had to work for them. This is back in September, and I think what was going on was that the second spawn of the year for a lot of those fish was kicking into gear. And it really depresses the bite. It just does. But if you enjoyed this video, the tips, the action, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And check out all the content I already have online. I have mountains of snakehead content out there for you. Instructional, action-based, all of it. So to close things out, thanks much for watching. And again, if you enjoyed it, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And have a good one.